All right. Hi, everyone. It's Regimen from Ontario, and I'm here this afternoon on the West Coast, the evening on the East Coast, with Duke Ragnar Blackhammer from Atlantia. Welcome. So I've been doing these Duke interviews because I think actually I fought you last year, but I had this quest to fight 50 Dukes, and nobody's fighting anyone this year. So instead, I'm interviewing them, and Sir Bryce said that I should definitely interview you. So I'm very excited to learn more about you. I usually start these with sort of your Sca origin story. If you can tell me when and where and how you found the Sca, that would be great.
Well, I actually started in foam weapons combat in a group called Dagahir. When I was 15, there was a park about a mile from my parents' house. My older brother used to do it, and my best friend at the time found it, and we started doing foam weapons. And then my brother took me to my first Pentic when I was 15. So I got to understand there was a bigger, broader universe out there, but really didn't get involved in the SCA until I graduated high school and went off to college my freshman year.
And did you find the SCA group at college?
Yes, I was walking across the quad and heard people hitting each other with sticks and went, I have found my tribe.
So how long did it take you to get your armor together, or did any of your armor cross over from the foam?
I started getting my armor together when I was still a teenager. I was actually fighting at 16 at Pentic. I wasn't doing a lot of SCA fighting other than Pentic because I was part of like a melee mercenary group. It wasn't until I went off to college and started going to actual SCA practices that I started doing tournament fighting and more one-on-one stuff. So I had very basic armor, but like most of it, I just bought off the shelf. I had a little money from when I was young. I got my leg caught in an amusement park ride, so I had some money set aside and blew more than I should have buying armor and stuff. I owned my armor and my best friend's armor and all that, just so we had a chance to fight and do stuff.
Cool. So did you start out fighting in the SCA Sword and Shield?
Yes, I am painfully left-handedly Sword and Shield. I can do things with other weapons in my hands, but not nearly as effectively.
Okay. Did anyone try to discourage you from fighting left-handed?
No, I don't think anyone's ever done that to me. I've seen people do it to other people, and I've seen lefties who are fighting as righties and all of a sudden find out they're lefties. I'm like, why are you crippling yourself? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm asking you because a couple of the guys I've talked to are lefties and they fight righty. So at college, did you meet some mentors for fighting?
My first fighting mentor I met before I left to go to college. And then when I was in college, I was doing a lot of local practice, kind of mentoring, not really clicking with anyone in particular, but working with the local knights. And then I clicked with a knight from 3 or 4 states away, and I was actually going to squire to him. And 2 weeks after we talked about it, he was hit head on in a car accident and passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. Earl Kane O'Shannon. And so that put kind of my path on hold for a little while.
So, did you find somebody else, or where did your path like take a detour?
At the time I started getting a lot of pings. There was like a local Duke who kept going, you should squire to me. And I was going, I fight left-handed Sword and Shield. You fight right-handed 2-sword with a katana in one hand. We are so not alike in any way, shape, or form. And we're not stylistically alike in the way that we teach and that we learn. And he's a great guy, just not someone I would have necessarily been a good student for. So I actually joined a household as a man-at-arms, I went to a buddy of mine and said, if I join this household, can you make all these people leave me alone for a while? Because I was literally getting over the fact that the guy I wanted to squire to was no longer here. So I was a man-at-arms for a couple of years. And then my best friend, Sir Balinar, who was going to squire with me to Earl Kane, chose a new knight. And once he did, I went, I should start looking. And I actually ended up squiring to Duke Anton, Sir Bryce's knight. We were squire brothers.
Is he a lefty as well?
Duke Anton, yes. We fight absolutely nothing alike.
Okay. Did his training methodology resonate with you?
He has what we would call a tough love training methodology. I believe we were authorizing different weapons forms, and my best friend, Sir Balinar, authorized two swords. And his commentary was, it's not that you're not safe, it's just that you suck. And then at that time, Lord Balinar goes out and wins the two-sword tournament. And I looked at him right before I went out to fight Greatsword, and I was like, Anton, tell me that I suck. I need that motivation. He was my that he's the best fourth choice I ever made. There was a bunch of list of knights in that, and honestly, his knight, Sir Forgal, was the person above him on my list, but Forgal was going to Japan at the time and fostering all his guys to Anton. But Anton was definitely the right choice for me as a teacher. As honestly, more so than needs to the fighting, he taught me how to be a knight and how to lead a household and those kind of things that were more intangible.
What was your training regimen like as a squire?
I am a horrible example of hell work's a great thing, and I never did it. People are like, what do you do? What do you train this way? I was like, I put my armor on and I hit people. I was lucky when I was coming up as a squire. I lived with Sir Bryce and Sir Balinar and Sir Christian. We were all unbelts together. And so there was always three other people in the house. Anytime I wanted to fight, okay, let's fight. And one of the big training tools that I had didn't involve ever actually putting armor on at all. I'd be up at 1 o'clock in the morning watching MASH reruns, and my squire brother Christian would come home, just gotten off work, and he'd be like, Rags, I have this idea. And you start talking about fighting, and then all of a sudden we're walking through stuff and we've got yardsticks in our hand. And so whole combinations of shots and fighting and everything got vetted before armor ever got put on, just because I lived in a fighting household that there was always going on or being talked about. Or so I was never close to the. Sorry. Go ahead.
I missed the last part. What did you say?
I was gonna say I was never closer than 4 hours to my knight, but would see him at events on the weekends. But living with my squire brothers, it was kind of like mini nights all the time.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool resource to have as you're all passionate about fighting and developing, to have three other people living with you. So
it was great. It was a great, healthy, competitive. We would push each other. We loved like putting the other under our thumb just to push the other to try and get, but it was always in a positive way.
When you were a squire, or even before you were a squire, was the goal to be knighted, or was the goal to eventually be a duke? Or
I was a mercenary guy hanging out in the bog at Penzic, and I realized I don't really, that didn't speak to me. I wasn't about getting paid to fight, wasn't about that. And I actually heard Sir Bryce sing a song called Peasant Night that Mistress Rosalind wrote, and I went, I want to go be a knight. And one of the nicest things Anton ever did The very first time we sat down, we were in a Pizza Hut after a big war practice, and I'm sitting with him and Forgal, and the first thing he says to me is, he's like, "Well, Rags, it's a given you're going to be a knight." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "No, yeah, that's a given. So the question is, you got to decide what kind of knight you want to be." And he was so just matter of fact about it that I never doubted it. It was never a, "Oh, am I going to make it?" And I've watched unbelts go through that, and I bleed for them when they do. And I feel so lucky that I never had, I mean, I had some plateauing and some setbacks, but not any of the things I've seen some unbelts go through. Feel very lucky.
When he told you that you had to choose what kind of knight you wanted to be, did you guys ever have that conversation?
Talk about stylistically what you want to be.
Yeah.
And Anton was a good role model for me because he was the guy in the kingdom who would take on the bad jobs. He was the guy with the broad shoulders who had, if somebody had to be the bad guy, he was going to be the one to take the hard job on. And I always respected that. He's a little more tough love than I am, but only a little bit. But he was very willing to make the hard choices. And his love for the kingdom was something he inspired in me too. From being a bog trooper mercenary to being the biggest Kool-Aid drinking royalist you're ever going to find.
Is it culturally, do the fighters in Atlantia always fight in Crown, or is that something that you only fight in when you want to go for Crown?
It tends to be you only fight in it when you want to win it, especially if you're good enough to impact a list that way. Although when I was coming up, there was a whole mindset of unbelts fought in it so that they could get seen. Even if they didn't plan on winning, it was where you went to go get seen and get talked about. And occasionally it would be, there'd be people who were good enough that knights would be like, "Are you serious about this? Because you could have the right day." And so making sure that the unbelt was ready if that was the case, and they weren't just there to show off.
So were you fighting Crown to get seen?
I actually fought Crown whenever the lady I was with wanted me to fight. If my sweetie wanted to be in Crown, then fought in Crown. I never had a push or drive to have to win it. I've never I had to prove or anything like that. The job sounded interesting, but until I actually did the job, you always think you know what the job is. And I was the Squire of a multi-duke and that, but yeah, no, you don't know the job till you're in the job.
I was noticing. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I was as an unbelt fighting in Crown, you're not prepared for what the job is until you're doing the job. And fortunately, I had an incredible amount of support when I won my first one. Otherwise, I would have been swamped.
I was noticing when I looked you up on the OP that you got knighted the same year that you were made a count. So did you win your first Crown unbelted?
Yes, I'm the last Atlantean to win as a Squire.
And did you fight a knight in the finals?
No, I actually fought another Squire. Duke Ladd, before he was Duke Ladd, and I both finaled. And the funny thing is my knight was the only one who knew it was coming. He talked to the king that morning, and the king was talking to him about his 5 weapons final format and how this count would have a good chance and this knight would have a good chance. And Anton looked at him and said, "That's great. They won't make it. They won't outlast your unbelts." And it was a great finals, and it was best of 5 that went to 5 fights. And the last fight, I killed Vlad and almost got stabbed in the face at the same time. It was just a hair tiny little fraction of an inch difference between winning and losing. And we were both ecstatic for each other that no matter how the finals went, it was great getting to fight a friend in the finals.
What a great way to win your first crown. So were you surprised that you won?
I was ready to win, I think, and there was nobody I didn't think that I could handle. I had gone out in the semifinals to crown before and lost. I was coming in with a loss and had to beat the guy twice, won the first fight and then lost my leg. And then the other two people in the other semifinals, I fought at practice every week and owned them like they owed me lunch money. And I'm like, why couldn't I have drawn one of those two? So I was ready. And Anton actually came to me the morning of crown and he says, Rags, there's some guys in this crown who want to get hit pretty hard. So if you don't do as well as you did last time, don't get upset. And walked away and left me. And I was mad. I was like, hey, there's nobody I can't beat. I was dropping F-bomb at it. I'm like, and that's what he was telling me to get me motivated. And then he's walking over to the king going, yeah, your unbelts are going to kick your knight's butt. So he knew, but he didn't want me not going in with the right mindset.
Was mindset something that you worked on while you were a Squire? Was there any point where you felt like you needed to work on your tourney mindset, or do you have like a tourney day ritual to get yourself in the right mindset?
I build a playlist before each crown. And so I will listen to stuff and get my mind right and get focused. And then I get the emotions ramped up and then I basically turn it off so I can get cold before the tournament. The first crown I won for my lady, Duchess Lynette, I'm in the middle of the tournament working with a younger left-handed guy who had just gotten knocked out because his shield was too big. And we're talking about stuff, this, that, and the other. And somebody walks by and they're like, Rags, did you get knocked out already? I'm like, no. I've got time before my next fight. It was my way of not stressing about the next fight was going to happen and staying loose. I find that there's ways you can get distracted and there's ways you can keep yourself from being distracted. I've learned what I need to do. I don't need 50 people uncontent with me. Quite the opposite, I need maybe a max of 5. I think there's a whole thing when it comes to tournament, crown or otherwise, but you got to manage your body, you've got to manage the tournament, you've got to manage the list and know what's going on. I've won 5 crowns not being the best fighter in the world. I've won 5 crowns being the best fighter that day, at least for 5 minutes of that day, and the smartest fighter in a 30-second window of time.
How do you teach your dependents how to manage themselves?
One of the nice things is I believe in squiring adults for the most part. So I don't have to manage their behavior as much as I have to manage their fight expectations. One of the great things Anton taught me was you take people to give them a place and a platform. And so I've had the broad spectrum of phenom fighter who's actually way better than I ever was, to person who was older and had a tiny window and didn't make it as a knight, but he was an incredible landed baron and makes a great pelican. So I've had one Squire pelican, 2 knights, all I need now.
So tell me about your first reign that you did as an unbelt. What were you surprised by in your reign that you weren't expecting?
You think you know, having been the Squire of Monarch, how things are going to go, but you really don't. The biggest thing for me was seeing pollings returned and reading some of the things and just once you have brain, you see the underbelly side of the SCA sometimes. And so you can do one of two things. You can either let that eat at you, or you can know that it's there and embrace the better dream side of it as much as possible. And someone just inaccurate, but just mean-spirited, and it's like, wasted the time of your life to do this and wasted my time to have to read this. And as an adult who I got knighted as prince, so trying to learn what it means to be a knight while trying to run at the same time. And my knight, my crown, so trying not to be shadowed by a guy who's a single word entity in the kingdom. Yeah, the funny thing is, I won crown as an rewrite the chivalry meeting. Please don't. I need to make sure they're not going to try and knight you or Vlad today, since you both finaled the crown. So I didn't go to chivalry meeting at the crown one. There's not a chivalry meeting until the crown I held. So he's one crown sitting there, and he looks at me and goes, "Well, go ahead." I'm like, "Go ahead." He's like, "Run the meeting." I'm like, "I have never been to one of these."
I think I just lost him. Nope. Nope. Here we go. Are you back? I think we lost you. For
I'm sorry. We have poor internet where we live. We lived out on dirt road.
Okay, there we go. All right, you're back. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's you cut out right when you were talking about how you had to run your first meeting and you never attended one before. So that's kind of funny in a way. How was it getting put on Vigil as Prince?
It's one of those things. People talk about what's better, a writ and knowing or a surprise, etc. I was robbed of the surprise because I won the crown. And at the time, Anton's squires were knighted either at Penzik or at one of our events in Kingdom, the Tournament of Emir. I was going to be king at Penzik, so I knew I wasn't getting knighted there. So I literally looked at my first queen at the time when we were Prince and Princess and went, "Oh, they're knighting me at Emir." She's like, "You can't say that." I'm like, "Okay, I won't say that, but they're knighting me at Emir." So I did things the night before, like we could leave all of our armor in the big front room, or no, I could put it right next to my bed, next to my head. So my Squire brother had to sneak in and try and take it away at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I heard him and I'm like, do I sit up and ask him what he's doing? No, I'll be nice and let him take it.
So what's the tradition with that, with your Squire brother taking your armor before you get knighted?
They were taking it so they could set up the vigil tent, so my armor was up on display, because my vigil started at like 6 o'clock in the morning. They came for me, and at 6 in the morning, my knight and my former knight, who has man-at-arms 2 before, and my grand knight all come in and they're like, "Ragnar, the king needs you." And I'm like, "That's great, he can wait." And as prince, everywhere we went, my predecessor was late for everything. It wasn't about should have been knighted earlier. It was about he's always late, so he can wait. Because I'm trying to find my glasses and my boots and that. Now, if they had said, "Ragnar, there's 50 people standing on the lakefront in the freezing rain," my butt would have been up and out to the cabin. But
Were there 50 people waiting for you in the
epic.
freezing rain?
Yes. It was rainy, snowy. It was so bad they canceled every activity at the event. There was no fighting, there was no fencing, no archery, no nothing. Only thing going on at that event was pretty much my vigil, and it was one of the only 2 dry, warm spots on site. Because I benefit from other people's misfortune at times, and one of Anton's previous squires had set vigil at Emir, And rather than getting a vigil bath, they walked him in the lake. And he caught pneumonia sitting vigil. So they walked me in the lake. They immediately walked me out. There's a tent on the lakefront for me to change clothes, and then another tent for me to sit vigil with a space heater in it. So people were literally standing in my tent so they could get warm. And I'm like, after a while, they'd start blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, you're done really talking to me. You're just getting warm. So that's fine. You don't need to talk anymore.
What's why is there? Oh, go ahead.
The other thing I found out, when you sit vigil as prince, nobody tells you no. So like Sir Tanek came in and I'm like, oh, I really like your Squire Wolfric. I would love to have him on my guard when I step up in a couple months. Yeah, nobody tells you no. I've lost audio.
Oh, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. What's the tradition?
Yes.
Anton Squires getting knighted at either Emir or Pinzik? Is it
literally at that point that's in place? It's not necessarily his first two were at Pinzik, and then his third was at Emir. I was his fourth. And then after that, it's been other places like Bryce was done at King's Assessment, so was Christian. But that's a time, and Martin was done in Trimaris. It just happened to be at the time, that's what it was. So I knew it had to be there because it couldn't be at Pinzik because they can't knight me as king.
So do you remember any of your vigil advice? Was any of it super good?
I do remember there were many variations of your words will crush souls, up to and include, and it's the thing you tell people that your words have impact. You can really change some of and it's good advice, but literally somebody said the words to me, your words will crush souls. And I had finally, after like the 19th person using that kind of, I looked at them and went, really? You're telling me I can say words and I get to crush a soul by saying words? That is so cool. And their eyes got super big. They're in their head, I think they're going, this guy's going to be my king. And I'm like, I'm just messing with you. I understand my words are important. And it's funny that I got that advice a whole lot. And it actually really ties into, it's one of those motto things. It almost became my night motto. It's a Maya Angelou quote. They'll never remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Love that quote. So that's good advice for reigning too, right?
I'm a big proponent when you reign, you've just signed on for 6 months and it's your job to make sure that people are having a good time. You're the person leading the party. Your job is, and especially when you're giving awards, you don't know when the next time that will be recognized. If you don't make them feel important in that 30 seconds to a minute that they're up there, you fail because you rob them of their moment.
So you've reigned 5 times. What are some of the things you do to make people feel special when they're getting awards?
I learned how to pronounce their name. You'd be amazed how important that is. I actually had a herald who we would poke at each other some, and he was messing this guy's name up, and I turned over my shoulder and I was like, Michael, do you have a problem saying Kana Cochrane's name? And this guy's just, he like perks up like, the king knows who I am. We'd learned some things about them, and we had like note cards and stuff. So we know that Bob is a local seneschal. We know that he runs practice. And you say 2 or 3 things about somebody, and they feel like, I'm not just another name on a form. I'm not just, here's AOA number 12, And it's one of those things that if for some reason something comes up and you don't know somebody, then you talk about them in the most glowing way possible, but you spend a minute of time praising them and highlighting the importance of what they do.
So how was it to go back to Penzic as king after, you had been there your first time at 15 years old?
Uh, it was actually pretty, the other four have actually been reigns, but Prince of Penzic. Yeah. It was a very, very being Penzic king the very first time, having to figure out which side to fight on, all the war stuff, and just the summer reign is it's shorter, but it is more intense in some respects on the kinds of event. And Penzic is the biggest bulk pull of your time. It was a big steep learning curve going into Penzic, but fortunately I came from a big household of people. We actually knighted my Squire brother. And so I had Duke and Anton and a couple others were going over the ceremony and how it's going to go. And so I'm practicing dubbing to make sure I do all the stuff right. Well, to make the Squire go away, we had to send him to the Cooper store so they handed him $20 and said, buy as much chocolate milk as you can with this. And he comes back with a bag of chocolate milk and they're all looking at him like, drink up, guys. Because if you don't drink the chocolate milk, he's going to be wondering why he went to the store. And so you have a bunch of beer drinkers stuck drinking chocolate milk, and I'm just kind of smiling and nodding because I don't drink and I drink chocolate milk.
Well, that's kind of cool that you got to knight your Squire brother.
Yeah, it was not hard to make because we have the tradition that you don't reward your own. But with Anton winning my crown, he was going to basically be stuck waiting about 1.5 years otherwise. And so what we decided was we're going to poll him, and he had to poll above a certain percentage, and he actually had to poll better than normal because his polling had to basically be bulletproof for me to pull the trigger on it.
As king in Atlantia, do you get to set the parameters for your successor's tourney? Like the tourney that you're holding?
The crown, yes, you can set crown however you want it. Logan, for instance, is a big proponent of random draw. Some people like to take the OP and fold it in half or do challenge in, that kind of thing. You can also set the finals format to be a specific way. Yeah, for someone who has minimal weapons depth, I have won 3 weapons finals, just pulling fights out of nowhere. But I tend to do it the traditional, what is the traditional Atlantean way, which is finals is picks, higher OP picks, 3rd round you bring your best. I don't tend to monkey with it too much because in my world, I want the best fighter to win because they were the best fighter, not because they had this particular one. I mean, I won a crown because I understood the format better than everybody else. My predecessor before my 4th reign held a 3 counted blows tournament. So every round was 3 counted blows. And I was the first person who understood I don't have to win 3-0. I just have to win 3-2. So if I get ahead 1 blow, now we trade blows, and 30 seconds later the fight's over. I wasn't better than my opponents. I just figured out the format quicker.
So it wasn't 3 unanswered blows. It was just 3 blows.
Yeah, it was literally whoever gets hit 3 times first loses. And once you get up 1-0, if I know I'm going to get hit, I can step through and land my blow and accept the fact that I'm going to get hit and trade, and all of a sudden it's 3 versus 2. And it allowed me to have fights that were 30 seconds long, whereas poor Count Sinclair, who I met in the finals, fought his former knight Logan for 45 minutes before one of them landed 3 blows.
I see. So you had a good strategy where you can be like, well, it's okay if we trade the blow because I'm going to get the last one.
Well, and it was, we could trade blows because I got the first one.
Right.
I'm ahead. Once we trade, I'm already up 1.
There you go. I get it.
Yep.
So even if you guys trade blows twice, you still win. If you got the first one.
Yep.
Okay.
I could get away with that as long as I was ahead. And it happened so fast that people weren't realizing while we're trading, that's not good. That's not a good strategy for you because you're behind.
You're a smart fighter.
I was last kid on the fence pad when I started. Like literally, we're picking teams. All right, well, I guess I'll take Ragnar. And it's because of my accident. I didn't do sports for a number of years. And so I started, and the guy I started with, my best friend at the time, was like Minnesota State wrestling champ and athletically gifted and also left-handed. And so watching him just excel from the beginning, it was one of those things I went, I don't like this. And I put in work to get better. But I was never the fastest and never the most athletic, but I was never not smart about fighting, never not, let's pay attention to the angle, the spacing. That's honestly where I excel when it comes to teaching. Isn't a blinding flat snap, anything like that. It's timing and distance, angles and spacing.
What is your methodology in teaching timing and angles and spacing?
The biggest thing I tend to teach, and it was a really eye-opening thing for one of my squires, Sir Irwin, was one of the first times we were working together, he did something and I said, why'd you do that? And he thought I was yelling at him. I was like, no. I want to know why you did it. Because I'm not saying what you did was wrong. I just want to know why you did it. Because I want to know if you know why you did it. It's an economy of movement sort of thing. And if you're doing something, whether it's you're standing a certain way, you're throwing a certain blow, you're stepping a certain place, you should know why you're doing it. It should have a purpose. It's one of the most frustrating things that I see is I'll watch a fight and be like, why wasn't that good? Well, I just tapped him because I was trying to throw this to make him do this and then to that. Well, yeah, but he didn't bite on any of that. So the only blow that landed was the tap that you didn't throw for real. So if you'd thrown that blow for real, even if you'd thrown that blow for real and then turned that into whatever else you were going to do, he'd be dead and the fight would be over. Instead, you tapped him. He didn't buy your fake, and then he clubbed you 3 blows later. One of the things I try to teach people, a lot of people do Pell work, and great for building memory in that, but your Pell A doesn't throw back, and B, most Pell work, people do it literally standing right in front of the Pell, and most people don't win fights there. So it's learning to do things like, all right, do that same Pell work with a step. Figure out where you want to be when that shot lands. And it's making sure people, like a lot of my squires, they don't get the concept originally that you don't have to move and then throw a blow. All you got to do is make sure your foot lands before the land. You can throw and move at the same time. I've lost audio again. Let's give it a second and see if it is up.
Sorry, that's my fault. I keep muting myself so that I can hear you and I don't interrupt you. Um, what is your favorite Atlantean tradition?
Probably that the outgoing monarchs serve to the incoming monarchs. And it hasn't always been kept, but to me, it's one of those classy signs of we support you. We're done with this job, but we know how hard it is. We want you every day to have our support and show that we accept it. It all actually staying at the event when they step down. I just think it kind of looks it just looks bad when it's like, okay, I got my duchy out the door, back to the hotel.
Do you feel like there's a difference in your role as a royal peer versus a knight? And if so, what is it?
Yes. My role as a knight is kind of a universal kind of, there are things like my job is to be the shield of the people who can't necessarily defend themselves. My job is to be an exemplar, an example, good behavior, good comportment on the field, things of that nature. Being a Duke means I had 2 good days. Being a royal peer, I believe there's a repository of history and knowledge. It's one of the things I think Duke Michael in our kingdom is fabulous at, is he has protocol knowledge, and this is what barony, he can literally rattle off there's 18 baronies, but they sit in this order by precedence because he's been around since they all started, and he just goes boom, 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 boom. And this is how you serve high table, and that's what I think a Duke should be able to do. As a Duke, I think I should be able, the monarch should be able to look at me and, I need you to entertain these visiting royals. I need you to stop all of a sudden in Herald Court for us, or do this. It's a different kind of role. And I think that my role as a knight is more, knight's who I am every day, Duke's a title that I have.
That makes sense. Do you have a favorite story from being king, like a favorite memory?
I got into this habit where I would try and give out what I consider to be, each reign I'd look at it and go, what's the most overlooked award? And in particular reign, one reign I knighted a guy who'd gotten passed over with like a 75% positive polling because, well, we don't make more than 2 nights in a reign, and there were 2 guys who had 85% positive polling. So I knighted him. In my 4th reign, I gave we have an award called the Sea Stag. It's specifically for teaching the fighting. It's a grant level award. And I gave it to the first king of the kingdom because the people who have learned from him directly or indirectly, you're probably talking half of the crown winners in our kingdom are either direct students or students of students, and he didn't have it because of stupid politics back when rocks were soft. And so I wanted to give that, and his wife, Duchess Shawn, had said, well, he won't take it. And I said, well, he might not take it if it's not given right. It's not presented in the right way. So I called him in, I called the order in, I did a verbal polling of the order in court. I had people in the crowd stand up. If you've ever learned from him directly, stand up. If you've ever learned from a student of his, by the time I was done, 3/4 of the audience was standing, and he received a unanimous verbal polling. So it was you can either take this from the crown or you can gainsay your monarch. And he came to me after court and he said, only because it was you and how you did it. But my honest favorite one though, was this last reign. I got to give the Pelican to my Grand Knight, Sir Forgal. We have an award in Atlantia called the Non-Paray. It's given out once per reign maximum. It's for the person who epitomizes what it means to be an Atlantean. It was created because they couldn't give Forgal a Pelican because they tried like 3 different times, and every time he would turn it down and say, I'm only doing the service befitting my station as a knight. And so that was the story I had coming up as a squire and for years. And I started thinking about it. And his knight is Duke Olaf, who's a Pelican. Whose knight is Duke Michael, who's a Pelican. Forgal's squires are Anton and Timok, who are both Pelicans. And Anton's squires are Kuin and Byram and Martin and Ragnar, who are all Pelicans. So there's one guy who's not a Pelican. So my goal was to give Forgal his Pelican. And it took some work in this last reign. But what we lovingly dubbed Operation Big Bird went off without a hitch. And I got him to take it.
I love that, Operation Big Bird. That's hilarious.
I actually sat him down and I said, you have set yourself apart from everybody else because you respect all of us and think we all deserve this award. But you're saying that you don't. So either you think you haven't done the work, which we all think is crap, or you for some reason are better than the rest of us and don't. And he goes, oh, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. And he looked at Anton, who was sitting there, and he goes, is this your doing? He goes, oh, no, this is all Ragnar.
Nice.
And it was great because Sir Forgal is in Trimaris now, but we were able to give it because his squire, Duchess Cherith, is
Cherish, yeah.
Yeah, she was queen of Trimaris at the time. So they came up to Atlantia for War of the Wings. We were able to
Did I lose you again, or are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay. That is super cool. So they basically gave you guys the boon to give him the Pelican from Atlantia, even though he was living in Trimaris.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's one they had to pull their order, we had to pull our order, and there's a lot of steps when you're talking about a patent level and that. But yeah, she got behind it, and actually I think it made it a little easier for her because she wholeheartedly agreed he deserved it, but didn't feel as his squire that she could necessarily give it herself.
Super cool. That is one of the best stories I've heard. I also noticed when I was looking at the OP that you are also a white scarf. Do you still fight rapier, or?
Yes. I picked up rapier when I was Prince my first reign to try and be supportive of the activity. And at one point I decided I was going to try and go become a white scarf and fence more to show them it wasn't just I'm going to do this while I'm king and that. And my squire brother Damon was he's a knight white scarf as well. And it's actually he was the one who, when I first won crown on, I had him come to the house and like, make me not look stupid. That's all I care about. I don't have to be great, but make me not look stupid when I go out there.
I'm always impressed when very successful fighters find the time to do both rapier and armored, because I don't know how you guys all find the time. So
it's a management kind of thing. It can be hard, especially if you're doing them in the same day. I have incredible marshals and MOLs at times. Like literally work with me so I could be fighting the end of one round and the beginning of the next round in one field, run off to the other field to bounce back and forth. Just incredibly accommodating in that. The other thing is you have to, at some point, be willing to one, you know, 2/3 of the way this tournament, got to make a choice at this point because it's bogging down. And they're so different. I actually find I fight better once I started fencing. I certainly teach better now because I understand some things, range and motion in that, and drilling in that I didn't understand as well as a heavy fighter that one doing fencing, repetitive motion and just some of those things, and better terminology than I used to have. It also makes fighting slow down
because it's
fencing happens at a much faster. Yeah.
So did I remember to tell you to bring your sword? Do you have a rattan?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Usually what we do is we look.
Yeah, I can get one. It'll take me just a minute to get it.
Oh yeah.
I can get one. It'll literally take me less than.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll be right back.
No problem. So we're just waiting for him to go get his sword. So hang in there. There we go. All right. Perfect. So if you could just sort of show your sword and explain how you put it together, that would be great.
I use either a heavier wire basket, so I have hand weight, or I tend to use aluminum cup hilt if I want more light and speed. I have some different swords for different things. I look at it kind of like golf clubs. You don't necessarily putt with a driver. I have swords that are specifically for killing a specific individual kind of thing. I tend to go on the lighter side of things, especially for my kingdom. I plane the handle down pretty small because I have dainty little hands. And I put one layer of vertical strapping tape after I put the thrusting tip on, and then one layer of vertical colored tape, and an edge. And this one's kind of chewed up and needs to be either re-edged or possibly replaced. Starting to get a little soft there. And it's basically, I hate triggers. I just don't like them. They've never worked for me, that trying to squeeze your fingers down or that. So I call martial deflector. I have everything on here because that's what the rules tell me I have to have. But I tend to do, and for my height, pretty close down by the handle here. And it literally, I'm of the mindset that force is mass times acceleration. So it's finding that right balance point between what something weighs versus how fast I can throw it.
How long is your stick?
It's about 36 and a half to 37. It's a 3-foot stick. And then I put a thrusting tip on the end of it because swords have points.
I agree. They do.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I don't know if it's the white scarf in me or not. I'm a big proponent of stabbing somebody, and I stab somebody like I hit somebody. I don't play got your nose. Literally, I throw it like a left cross, and I want their head to snap back a little bit. And I also believe if you don't have a thrusting tip, even if you're not good at it, you've just told your opponent, I don't have to block this, this, and this. I don't have to protect the center line. I've literally watched the finals of a crown where one fighter says, I have a thrusting tip, and the other one goes, I don't, and you watch the person's defense shift. I don't care if you're not good at it. If the threat's there, they have to honor it because they don't know.
And it's a good way to keep someone off of you too when you're on your knees.
Yeah,
I think. All right, so we're gonna do the final rapid fire 10 questions. Are you ready?
Okay, sure.
Right. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
Honestly, if I could fight anyone, I'd get a chance to fight Earl Kane again because I wasn't ever good enough to beat him before he passed.
That's a good answer. Who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
I would really like to see Sir Roussel, who just finaled in the last crown. I would love to see we have Knight Sir Tashius, but he only ever gets to fight once in a while because he works for CNN. So like anytime there's an election cycle or that, he's totally out. But yeah, he'd be great at the job. That's one of the things. There are people I look at and go, I wish I could give you this much more talent because you'd be really good at the job. Because having the talent to win the job doesn't necessarily make you good at the job.
If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
My knight.
Good answer.
He's one of the best analyzers of fighting I've ever seen.
What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Well, there's the one that's near and dear to my heart, which is the Vikings, Ernest Borgnine, Tony Piss, Kirk Douglas, which is where I first got the name Ragnar from years and years and years ago. But being a huge Queen fan, I am a sucker for an Excel. Yet I love A Princess Bride.
Those, all three very good movies. If you could add or subtract a rule to the rules of the list, what would it be?
I would add a rule that if you're caught complaining on the sidelines about a fight, that your card gets suspended for a month. Because it's one of the worst poisons I've ever seen. If you're not willing to talk to your opponent about how a fight went, and you're not willing to just suck it up if you thought you were cheated, or you were just willing to throw hard enough to make it end, don't whine about it on the sidelines. That doesn't solve anything. You can't fix a problem that way. If you don't think it went the way it's supposed to have went, your opponent can't ever learn, can't ever change anything, can't ever either address the outcome or possibly become better about it in the future if you're complaining to somebody over on the sides and not them.
True. What is your favorite tournament format?
I'm a big proponent of double limb. Big fan of it because one, it's not like single limb, but there's consequences as opposed to you can have a bear pit or things of that nature. But you got to be good enough to stay in. Now that being said, for a match of fighters, what I think is one of the best formats, if you've got a small number of people, is the round robin that you run through twice. And the only time you get points is when you're in the middle. So basically you can get as much points as you can while you're fighting in the middle, and then all you can do is try and play spoiler when the other people are in the middle. I think that's a great format for a lot of fighting for people who everybody gets to fight a bunch all day, regardless of how good they are. Because while I like double limb, I can understand if Bob's newer, driving 6 hours to fight 2 fights and then sit the rest of the day isn't necessarily the most fun.
Yeah. What is your favorite event?
Crown. I love everything that goes into it. I love the entry of the procession. I love the intensity of there are better fighting events in size and scope and everything like that, but there's a different kind of intensity when you fight Crown. There's a different mental aspect that goes into it. I like fighting it. I like watching it. I like marshaling it. I'll show up and just work for people. It's that whole aspect. I like knowing how my monarch won.
That's a great answer. If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
I love my bassinet, but it gets heavy at times. So I would probably get a lighter bassinet with a set of exchange visors. So I could do cut rust. And so I'm not just dying after an hour and a half long resurrection where my 12 gauge helmet is like, okay, done.
Okay. Who is your favorite fight ever?
Steph.
Oh, I lost him again. Oh no. Well, we are at the end, so maybe I give him just a second. Oh, second to come back and tell us who his favorite fight ever is. Are you there, Your Grace?
I'm here.
Okay, so who's your favorite fight ever?
Stefan von Dresden from the East Kingdom.
Okay, that's who I thought you were saying, but I was like, I heard Stefan.
He's the only person to beat me in a champion fight, and it was the most incredible fight. We were the last fight in a Gulf Force Champions, and it was tied, and we double killed, and then we were both down on our knees, and we had like 2 different bad false starts. There was one where I hit him, and his hand was on the ground, and he was going to take it, and I'm like, no, your hand was on the ground. That's 3 points down. And there was one point where he hits me because he heard a lay on that I didn't hear, and we're both calling stuff off, and eventually he beats me, and it was just the most fun, the most intense, challenging fight. He's incredible and super humble too.
He's definitely a legend, that's for sure. I look forward to someday either seeing him fight or fighting him myself. So, well, I want to thank you very much for your time and for dealing with our technical challenges. I really appreciate you being willing to do this. And I think you might be my first Atlantean Duke. And so it's been very interesting to hear about your traditions and how things are done down there. So thank you very much. Oh, and I lost him again. So, thank you everyone for joining us. My next interview is going to be with Duke Adamar from Meridies, and that'll be Saturday, and that should be super fun too. So thanks, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, Your Grace, if you're back. All right.
Thank you too. You have a good night.
Thanks.